The sound of the gavel striking wood echoed through the crowded auction house in Sweetwater, Texas, as Olivia Turner felt her heart sink to the dusty floorboards beneath her feet. She stood trembling on the wooden platform, hands bound before her with rough rope that bit into her wrists, her once fine blue dress now tattered after weeks of captivity. The year was 1873, and human dignity had a price tag in certain shadowy corners of the West. $500 for this fine young woman. Do I hear 600? The auctioneer's voice boomed across the room, filled with the worst sort of men, those who viewed people as property. His gavel raised high, ready to seal her fate, when a commotion at the back of the room drew every eye. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, the late afternoon sun casting him in dramatic shadow. His spurs clinked against the wooden floor as he strode forward, rifle raised and aimed directly at the auctioneer's chest. "She's not for sale," came the low, measured voice of Garrett Calloway, his blue eyes hard as steel beneath the brim of his worn leather hat. The auction house fell silent as death. The auctioneer's face paled, his gavel frozen mid-air as the barrel of Garrett's Winchester glinted in the lamplight. "Now, mister," the auctioneer sputtered, "this here's a legal transaction between—" "There ain't nothing legal about selling a woman," Garrett cut him off, his voice deadly calm as he moved closer, keeping his rifle trained steadily. "Step away from her." Olivia couldn't believe her eyes. She'd given up hope days ago when the band of outlaws had captured her stagecoach, killed the driver, and taken her prisoner. After her father's death, she'd been traveling west to live with her aunt in Santa Fe. Now, this stranger was risking his life for her. The auctioneer hesitated, looking nervously at the dozen or so rough men scattered throughout the room. Some were already reaching for their guns. "I wouldn't," Garrett warned, cocking his rifle with a decisive click. "Anyone reaches for iron, the auctioneer dies first. Then you." A tense silence filled the room as the men calculated their odds. Garrett stood his ground, never taking his eyes off the auctioneer. "Miss, step down from there," Garrett directed Olivia, his voice gentler now though his rifle remained steady. Olivia didn't need to be told twice. She gathered her skirts and descended the 3 wooden steps, her legs shaking so badly she feared they might give out. She moved to stand behind Garrett, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Now the rest of you listen," Garrett announced to the room. "The sheriff will hear about this place. This auction house closes today." The auctioneer's face twisted with anger. "You can't just—" "I can and I am," Garrett replied. "The law might be slow to reach these parts, but it's coming, and until it does, there's men like me." With his free hand, Garrett reached behind him, gently taking Olivia's arm. "We're backing out now. Anyone follows, they die." Step by careful step, they moved toward the door, Garrett never lowering his rifle. When they reached his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion tied outside, he helped Olivia mount before swinging up behind her. "Hold tight," he whispered, and they galloped away from Sweetwater, dust billowing behind them as they rode into the setting sun. They rode hard for nearly an hour, neither speaking as the landscape changed from dusty town to rolling prairie. Only when they reached a small creek did Garrett finally slow the horse to a walk, then halt entirely. "We should be safe here for now," he said, dismounting and helping Olivia down. Her bound hands made everything difficult. "Let me get those ropes off you." He drew a knife from his boot and carefully cut through her bindings. The feeling rushing back into her fingers was painful, but Olivia welcomed it. She rubbed her wrists, wincing at the raw skin. "Thank you," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "I don't know how to repay you." Garrett knelt by the creek, filling his canteen. "No need for repayment, miss. Some things a man just can't stand by and watch." "Olivia," she said. "Olivia Turner." He handed her the canteen. Garrett Calloway. Drink slow now. She took the water gratefully, forcing herself to sip rather than gulp. How did you know? About the auction, I mean. Garrett's face darkened as he led his horse to drink. I've been tracking that gang for 3 weeks. They've been capturing women from stagecoaches and settlements, selling them to the highest bidder. His hands clenched into fists. I missed stopping them from taking you, but I wasn't going to let them sell you. Are you a lawman? Olivia asked, studying his face. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with a strong jaw shadowed with stubble and lines around his eyes that spoke of long days in the sun. No, madam, just a rancher who believes in justice. He looked away, and Olivia sensed there was more to his story than he was sharing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Garrett built a small fire. From his saddlebags he produced jerky and hardtack, offering them to Olivia. It's not much, but it'll keep you going. It's wonderful, she said sincerely, realizing how hungry she was. Days of meager rations had left her hollow. Where are we headed? There's a town called Cedar Ridge about a day's ride from here. Decent place with a proper sheriff. You'll be safe there while we figure out how to get you to your aunt in Santa Fe. Olivia nodded, relief flooding through her. My aunt doesn't even know what's happened. She's expecting me next week. We'll send a telegram from Cedar Ridge, Garrett assured her. As the fire crackled between them, Olivia studied the man who had saved her. His hands were strong and calloused, a working man's hands, yet they had been gentle when helping her. His rifle lay within easy reach, a reminder of the danger they might still face. Why are you tracking them? She asked suddenly. The gang, I mean, if you're not a lawman. Garrett was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. They took my sister 2 years ago. Emma was traveling to visit me at my ranch. I found her stagecoach ambushed, the driver dead. I've been looking ever since. Olivia's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry, Garrett. Every woman they sell, I hope to find her, haven't yet. His blue eyes reflected the firelight as he looked up. But I've saved 7 women so far. You're the 8th. Have you been doing this alone all this time? He nodded. My foreman runs the ranch. I go out when I hear rumors of the gang operating. That's a lonely life, Olivia observed quietly. Better than doing nothing. He stood, checking the perimeter of their small camp. You should get some sleep, Miss Turner. I'll keep watch. Garrett offered her his bedroll, which she gratefully accepted. Despite her exhaustion, sleep came fitfully. Every sound in the night startled her awake, memories of her captivity still too fresh. Sometime in the darkest hours, she opened her eyes to find Garrett still sitting upright by the dying fire, his profile strong against the night sky, watching over her. Dawn broke crisp and clear across the prairie. Olivia awoke to the smell of coffee brewing over a small fire. Morning, Garrett greeted her, offering a tin cup of the steaming liquid. Hope you slept some. Better than I have in weeks, she admitted, accepting the cup gratefully. The hot liquid warmed her from the inside, giving her strength. How far to Cedar Ridge? We'll be there by sundown if we ride steady, he replied, already packing up their small camp. Are you strong enough to ride that long? Olivia squared her shoulders. I'm stronger than I look, Mr. Calloway. A hint of a smile touched his lips. I don't doubt that for a second, Miss Turner. They set off as the sun cleared the horizon, Olivia riding behind Garrett, her arms wrapped around his waist. The rhythmic motion of the horse was soothing, and the vastness of the open prairie brought a sense of freedom after her confinement. Tell me about your aunt in Santa Fe, Garrett said after they'd ridden in comfortable silence for a while. Aunt Margaret is my father's sister. She moved west after her husband died in the war, started a small dressmaking shop that's done quite well. Olivia explained, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the wind and hoofbeats. "When my father passed this spring, she was kind enough to invite me to live with her." "You have no other family back east?" "No, mother died when I was born. It was just father and me in Boston." The familiar grief washed over her. "He was a professor of literature, taught me everything he knew." "An educated woman," Garrett observed. "That's rare out here." "Is that a problem?" She felt rather than saw his smile. "Not at all. The West needs more civilization, not less." They stopped briefly at midday to rest the horse and eat a simple meal of jerky and the last of the hardtack. Olivia took the opportunity to wash her face in a small stream they were following, trying to rinse away some of the grime of captivity. "Here," Garrett said, offering her a clean handkerchief from his saddlebag. "It's not much, but it might help." She accepted it gratefully. "You're very kind, Mr. Calloway." "Garrett," he corrected. "Out here, formalities seem a bit unnecessary between people who have shared a campfire." "Garrett," she repeated, smiling for what felt like the first time in ages. As they continued their journey, Olivia began to notice the subtle beauty of the land around them, the way the prairie grasses waved in the breeze, the occasional stands of trees marking watercourses, the distant silhouettes of mesas against the vast blue sky. Despite her ordeal, or perhaps because of it, she found herself appreciating the wild freedom of this country. "It's beautiful out here," she remarked. "Different from Boston in every way imaginable." "Takes some getting used to," Garrett replied. "But once the West gets in your blood, nowhere else feels quite right." "Your ranch, is it far from here?" 2 days' ride north. Nothing fancy, but the grazing's good and the water's clean. Started with just 50 head of cattle and built it up over the years." "You must be proud of what you've accomplished." He was quiet for a moment. "I was, before Emma disappeared. Now it just feels empty." Olivia's heart ached for him. "You don't have to answer, but do you think she's still alive?" Garrett's shoulders tensed beneath her hands. "I have to believe she is. Otherwise, what am I doing out here?" "You're saving other women," Olivia said softly. "Like me." The land began to change as afternoon stretched on, becoming more varied with rocky outcroppings and deeper ravines. Garrett grew more alert, scanning their surroundings constantly. "This territory can be dangerous," he explained when Olivia questioned his vigilance. "Bandits use these ravines for cover." No sooner had he spoken than the crack of a rifle shot split the air. Garrett reacted instantly, pulling Olivia from the horse and tumbling with her behind a large boulder as more shots rang out. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his body shielding hers as bullets struck the rock around them. "No," she gasped, heart pounding. "Who's shooting at us?" "Could be the gang, could be ordinary bandits," Garrett replied grimly, already drawing his rifle. "Either way, they picked the wrong day." He peered carefully around the edge of the boulder, then ducked back as a bullet chipped stone inches from his head. "I count 3 of them in those rocks to the north," he told her. "Stay down." Before she could protest, he was moving, using the terrain for cover as he worked his way to a flanking position. Olivia pressed herself against the boulder, terrified but determined not to panic. The shooting continued, bullets striking around her hiding place. Then she heard Garrett's rifle crack 3 times in rapid succession. The bandit fire ceased abruptly, followed by a shout of pain and the sound of retreating hoofbeats. "Olivia," Garrett called. "Are you all right?" "Yes." She called back, relief flooding her. He appeared moments later, rifle still at the ready. "I hit one. The others fled. We need to move quickly before they bring reinforcements." Their horse had bolted during the gunfire, but Garrett tracked and recovered it quickly. Within minutes, they were galloping away from the ambush site, taking a more circuitous route toward Cedar Ridge. "Were they from the gang?" Olivia asked when they finally slowed to give the horse a break. Didn't recognize them, Garrett replied, scanning the horizon. Just opportunists, I think. Saw a man and woman alone and thought we'd be easy pickings. They were wrong, Olivia said with unexpected fierceness. Garrett glanced back at her, a hint of admiration in his eyes. They certainly were. By the time the sun was beginning to set, the small town of Cedar Ridge appeared on the horizon, a collection of wooden buildings strung along a main street, with scattered homesteads surrounding it. Never had civilization looked so welcoming to Olivia. "Sheriff's office first," Garrett said as they rode into town, drawing curious glances from townsfolk on the boardwalks. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Harkins with a silver star pinned to his vest, listened gravely to their story. His weathered face darkened when Garrett described the auction house in Sweetwater. "Heard rumors of such goings-on," he admitted, "but Sweetwater's outside my jurisdiction. I'll wire the territorial marshal tonight." He turned kind eyes to Olivia. "Meanwhile, Miss Turner, the boarding house across the street has clean rooms and honest folks running it. You'll be safe there." "Thank you, Sheriff," she replied gratefully. "I'll settle her at the boarding house and then send that telegram to her aunt," Garrett told the sheriff. "We'll come by in the morning to see about that marshal." The boarding house was run by a plump, motherly woman named Mrs. Peterson, who clucked sympathetically at Olivia's appearance and immediately promised a hot bath, clean clothes, and a proper meal. "You poor dear," she fussed, leading Olivia upstairs. "What an ordeal you've had." Garrett remained downstairs. "I'll go send that telegram and be back to check on you," he told Olivia. "Get some rest." The hot bath was heavenly, washing away weeks of grime and fear. Mrs. Peterson had found her a simple but clean dress that fit well enough, and the meal of roast chicken, potatoes, and fresh bread was the most delicious thing Olivia had tasted in memory. When Garrett returned an hour later, he almost didn't recognize her. Clean and properly dressed, with her chestnut hair neatly pinned up, Olivia looked transformed. Something flickered in his eyes when he saw her, something that made her heart beat faster. "Your aunt sends her prayers and thanks," he reported, accepting Mrs. Peterson's offer of coffee. "She wired money for your stage ticket to Santa Fe. The next stage leaves in 3 days. 3 days." The knowledge that she would soon continue her journey should have brought only relief, but Olivia felt an unexpected pang at the thought of parting from Garrett. Will you be continuing your search?" she asked carefully. He nodded, his expression somber. "There's word of the gang operating near the territorial border. I'll head that way once I know you're safely on that stage." Mrs. Peterson, sensing the mood, discreetly withdrew to the kitchen, leaving them alone in the small parlor. "I wish there was some way I could help you find your sister," Olivia said softly. "You already have," Garrett replied, surprising her. "Each woman I help gives me hope that someone might be helping Emma wherever she is." Impulsively, Olivia reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "You're a good man, Garrett Calloway." His hand turned, fingers wrapping around hers briefly before he pulled away as if the contact burned. "I should let you rest," he said, standing abruptly. "It's been a long day." "Where will you stay?" she asked. "There's rooms above the saloon. I'll be fine." He hesitated at the door. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night," she replied, watching him go with a curious ache in her chest. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Olivia had slept deeply for the first time in weeks, secure in the knowledge that she was safe. After breakfast, she and Garrett walked to the sheriff's office as planned. Sheriff Harkins had news. "Got a reply from the marshal. He's already on his way to Sweetwater with a posse. Seems your auction house wasn't the only operation they were running. They've been terrorizing 3 counties. Garrett's face hardened. "Any word on the gang leaders?" Marshall thinks they're holed up in Blackwater Canyon, about 50 miles south of here. He's planning to hit them after cleaning up Sweetwater. Olivia saw the change come over Garrett immediately, a new tension, a new purpose. Blackwater Canyon, he repeated. How recent is this information? Fresh as yesterday, the sheriff replied. Why? You're not thinking of riding there yourself, are you, if there's a chance Emma's there? Garrett's voice trailed off. The marshal asked specifically that civilians stay clear, Harkins warned. These are dangerous men, Calloway. I'm well aware, Garrett replied grimly. Outside the sheriff's office, Olivia confronted him. You're going after them, aren't you? I have to, he said simply. If there's even a chance. The marshal is already handling it, she argued. You heard the sheriff. The marshal doesn't know what Emma looks like. What if they rescue the women but don't realize she's my sister? His blue eyes were intense with determination. I need to be there. Olivia knew arguing was futile. This mission had driven him for 2 years. He wouldn't abandon it now. When will you leave? She asked instead. Today. Now. He looked at her apologetically. I'm sorry, Olivia. I know I promised to see you safely onto that stage. I understand, she said, though her heart sank at the thought of him riding into danger. Cedar Ridge seemed safe enough. He nodded, clearly relieved she wasn't going to argue further. Mrs. Peterson will look after you, and Sheriff Harkins is a good man. They walked in silence back to the boarding house, where Garrett collected his few belongings. At the stable, as he saddled his horse, Olivia stood by helplessly, knowing these might be their final moments together. Garrett, she said as he prepared to mount, please be careful. He turned to her, something unspoken in his eyes. For a moment she thought he might embrace her, but he merely nodded. I will. Thank you, Olivia, for understanding. And then he was gone, riding south out of Cedar Ridge, a solitary figure against the vast landscape. Olivia watched until he disappeared from sight, a strange emptiness settling over her. The next 2 days passed slowly. Olivia helped Mrs. Peterson around the boarding house to keep busy, but her thoughts constantly returned to Garrett. Was he safe? Had he found his sister? Would she ever know? On the evening before the stage was due to arrive, Sheriff Harkins brought news. The marshal's posse had successfully raided the gang's hideout in Blackwater Canyon, freeing over a dozen captive women and arresting or killing most of the gang members. Any word of Garrett Calloway? Olivia asked anxiously. The sheriff shook his head. Nothing specific, but the marshal reported civilian assistance in the raid. Could have been him. That night, Olivia barely slept, torn between hope and fear. By morning, she had made a decision. She would take the stage as planned, but not to Santa Fe. She would go to Garrett's ranch instead. If he returned there, she would find him. If not, at least she might learn something about him, about Emma, about the man who had saved her life. She was at the general store purchasing supplies for her journey when commotion in the street drew her outside. A group of riders was coming into town, the marshal's posse, by the looks of the badges glinting in the morning sun, and riding among them. Her heart leapt. Garrett, dusty and tired-looking, but alive. And beside him on another horse sat a young woman with the same blue eyes, her blonde hair tangled and dirty, but her head held high. Emma. It had to be. Olivia stood frozen on the boardwalk as the riders dismounted in front of the sheriff's office. She watched as Garrett helped his sister down, his face transformed with joy and relief. The siblings embraced, and something in Olivia's chest tightened at the sight. Then Garrett looked up and saw her. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the dusty street. Then, saying something to Emma, he crossed toward Olivia, his spurs jingling with each step. You found her, Olivia said as he reached her, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. I did. His face was weary but radiant. She was there, just as the marshal's intelligence suggested. 2 years of captivity, but she's alive, Olivia. She's alive. I'm so happy for you, she said sincerely. For both of you. He studied her face. You're dressed for travel. The stage to Santa Fe. It arrives within the hour, she confirmed, not mentioning her changed plans. Those seemed irrelevant now. Something like regret crossed his features. I had hoped. That is, I wanted to be the one to see you safely to your aunt. You've done more than enough, Garrett. You saved my life. And you gave me hope when I needed it most. His hand reached up, hesitating before gently touching her cheek. I don't want to say goodbye, Olivia. Her heart thundered in her chest. Then don't, she whispered. Come with us, he said suddenly. To my ranch, just for a while. Emma will need another woman to talk to after everything she's been through, and I. He trailed off, seeming unable to find the words. And you, she prompted softly. I need you, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. These past days, riding to Blackwater Canyon, all I could think about was finding Emma and returning to you. I've never felt that way before. Olivia smiled, warmth spreading through her. I was going to your ranch anyway, she confessed. I changed my plans this morning. I couldn't bear not knowing if you were safe. Surprise and joy transformed his face. You were coming to find me. Yes, she said simply. I think I started falling in love with you the moment you raised that rifle and said I wasn't for sale. Garrett's laugh was sudden and full, drawing glances from passers-by. Well, Miss Turner, it seems we're of the same mind. He pulled her gently into his arms there on the main street of Cedar Ridge, not caring who saw. His kiss was tender and questioning at first, then deepening as she responded, her arms sliding around his neck. When they finally parted, both breathless, Emma was watching them from across the street, a knowing smile on her face despite her ordeal. I should introduce you to my sister, Garrett murmured, his forehead resting against Olivia's. And then we have a telegram to send to your aunt. Telling her I'll be delayed, Olivia asked. Telling her you'll be visiting the Calloway ranch, he corrected. For as long as you'd like to stay. Olivia's smile could have lit the prairie night. That might be quite a while, Mr. Calloway. I'm counting on it, Miss Turner, he replied, taking her hand in his as they crossed the street together toward a new beginning neither had imagined possible just days before. The stage to Santa Fe departed Cedar Ridge that afternoon without Olivia Turner aboard. Instead, she rode north with Garrett and Emma Calloway, toward a ranch she'd never seen, and a future suddenly bright with promise. As the town receded behind them, Olivia glanced at Garrett riding beside her, his profile strong against the endless sky, and knew with certainty that sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms even in the barrel of a rifle, and the words, "She's not for sale." 5 years later, Garrett Calloway stood on the porch of his ranch house, watching his wife, Olivia, walk through the garden with their 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. Emma, now married to the town doctor, waved from her buggy as she departed after her weekly visit. The ranch had prospered, doubling in size and reputation, but Garrett measured his wealth differently now in the laughter of his child, in the love of his wife, in the peace they'd all found after so much darkness. The auction house in Sweetwater was long gone, its operators serving time in territorial prison. The West was changing, civilization creeping forward with each passing year. But some things remained constant: the vast sky overhead, the rolling prairie that stretched to the horizon, and the love that had begun with a raised rifle and 7 simple words that had changed their lives forever.